I stayed in my toxic relationship for 7 years, and I knew within the first month that it was going to be a relationship that did not work for me. We went on our first date, and I remember coming back to work the next day and talking to my coworkers, and they were asking all the stories about the date, how'd it go, blah, blah, blah. And I just said to myself, I'm going to tell them about this, but I'm going to let them know the real deal. And so I said it wasn't good. And he spent probably 90% of the time on the first date talking about his workout. And y'all, when I'm saying like talking about his workout, I mean like every set he did, every rep he did, how much weight he lifted. And I was like, okay, so he's passionate about weightlifting and we both worked out often. So it wasn't abnormal for that to be our conversation. But what was abnormal was that the conversation centered around him, and it centered around things that weren't really significant conversation topics for me. And me being the me that I was, I went on several more dates and stayed in the relationship for 7 years, even though that was the way that it started, but that was the way that it ended too. The relationship was significantly weighted toward what he needed and what he wanted and how he wanted things to be. And we talked a lot about things that were not topics of conversation that I wanted to be talking about. And this isn't in some like I wanted the relationship to revolve around me type way, but I'm talking like him telling me that I wasn't a good parent, him telling me that I wasn't a good housekeeper, him telling me that I wasn't making enough money, like literally annihilating my character and chopping me down bit by bit until I felt like I couldn't get out of the relationship. And so why did it take me so long to let go of that relationship when it wasn't for me? Why was it so hard to let go of something that I knew from literally month one was not going to be something that would be able to sustain me or him, or the relationship would not be able to sustain itself? And part of the reason is because my dad was an addict. And I know you're like, well, how do those two things compare? Well, my dad was part of the opioid epidemic where they were literally just prescribing opioids to anybody who came in and had a headache. And because of that, he became extremely addicted to them and just was taking more and more and more. And the dose was just incredibly too high for anyone to be taking, etc. But I spent my teen years into my adult years waiting for someone to become the person that I knew that they were. Waiting for him to perhaps one day wake up and say, I'm going to let go of this thing that has a stronghold on me, and I'm going to go back to the person that I was before. And so because I spent my entire teenage years and part of my adult years yearning for that and waiting for it, and spoiler alert, he eventually did let go of the addiction and become more of who he was before and even turn into better things. But because I built up that tenacity and that patience for the person that gave birth to me, gave life to me, then I also did the same thing for the men in my spaces. I just continued to wait for them to become that shade of themselves, that hue of themselves that they entered the relationship into. And I didn't know how to let go of that thing. And the other reason is because I did not think that I was worthy of making that decision, because I thought that having someone meant that I was chosen, and being chosen was the most important thing. And so when we don't let go of things, it literally starts to chip it away at our emotional well-being, chip away at our spiritual well-being, chip away at our physical well-being. And eventually we become this shell of this person. And now we're trying to develop the tenacity and patience to become the version of ourselves that we want to be, because we've become this version that is no longer who we are. And we don't even recognize that person. Releasing someone, especially someone who is toxic, would be really easy if we just stuck to the facts. The facts are that this person isn't good for me and I need to let them go. But instead of sticking to the facts, we make meaning of things. If I let him go, then that means I'm going to be alone. And if I'm alone, then that means that insert fear here. And we allow our fears to be the things that we fill the blanks in with. The unknown feels too scary because our fears have told us that it's going to mean something about us. And I've talked about this a million times, but when you're in a space where you want control and where you want safety, you'll attach yourself to the devil that you know before you will ever go into a space that feels like the unknown. And so we do that because letting go doesn't have any certainty inside of it. We forget that letting go means that we're no longer going to be in that toxic space. That's certainty. We forget that letting go means that we're no longer going to have to deal with the chipping away at our literal soul. That's fact-based. But instead of thinking about the things that are fact that are going to happen, there's no doubt about the fact that those things will happen. We hold on to the things that we are unclear about because we make meaning of them, and we tell ourselves that it means something if we're alone. And we tell ourselves that it means something if we're single. We tell ourselves that it means something if we aren't married or have these children that are a product of that relationship, but we don't have the partner. And because of that, we hold on to those things with this sort of anxious attachment, saying that I can't let you go, even though I know you aren't good for me, because I know that if I do that, then something painful is going to happen on the other side, and I don't want to deal with grief. And also something that I'm not sure of is going to happen on the other side, and I don't want to deal with uncertainty, so I'd rather stay in this space. And when we cling on to those relationships or situationships, whatever you call them, we are unable to heal emotionally. We are unable to experience personal growth because you're filling the space that you would use to pay attention to yourself and your healing and your personal growth with the toxicity. And you've probably heard the saying that you can't heal in the same place that harmed you. And that is 100% true. You can't be in that space and be developing yourself when yourself is being annihilated every day. But because we're holding on to it and we're focusing all of our attention on this other person, this other thing outside of us, then it feels like we're actually doing something, but we're not doing something for ourselves. In fact, what we're doing for ourselves is perpetuating this constant state of toxicity inside of our lives. So the way that you let go of it is exactly what I was detailing earlier. You think about the stories that you're telling yourselves and you write those down. You say, these are some stories that I'm telling myself. And if you're in an unhealthy space, you can put those in the notes in your phone and put a lock on them with a password so nobody sees them. You can write them and leave them somewhere else, like at work, etc. But I understand what it's like to have somebody go through your things, and then you have the fear that they're going to find the information that you wrote down about them, and that's going to cause a whole nother can of worms to be opened. So do it in a safe way. But write down the things that you're telling yourselves that are stories that you're filling in the blank with. And then write down what's actually going to happen. This is kind of a pseudo pros and cons list, but it's a reality and fake list. These are some fake things that I've told myself are going to happen, but this is a reality. I'll no longer have to walk on eggshells. Write down some things that you have to walk down on eggshells about right now. I'll no longer have the fear of 7 o'clock when he comes home. And write down the things that you are fearful of and the things that happen at that hour. I'll no longer have to lie to my family about what's going on in my personal life. And write down the lies that you've told. And those are the facts that you hold on to. I'll get to become the version of me that I was before I ever put myself in this space. Because the only way to let go of something is to realize that what you're holding on to isn't real. You're holding on to the idea of this thing being good. You're holding on to the idea of this thing being certain, but it's not good. And there's no certainty inside of it. The only thing you're certain of is that it's hell every single day. And so holding on to it for 7 years or 20 years or 30 years or however long it's been is only continuing this loop of a life that you no longer want to be living. And then after that, you can move on and you'll be able to start to notice the things about you that you were suppressing that you didn't even know you were suppressing. And I know sometimes we say, well, that's easier said than done. When I tell you that I don't know how I got the down payment for this house that I'm living in right now. I don't even know how I was able to qualify for the loan. None of it makes sense, but God. And I wasn't even making enough money to be able to sustain paying the bills. I don't know how any of this happened. But when I took that leap of faith and I quietly contacted a realtor and I quietly contacted some people to see how to get out of that space, things started happening, things started moving, and I was able to get myself in a better situation. And I'm going to tell you some things that I held on to after I left that situation and got here. I held on to the fact that I could now leave my bedroom door open when I slept because there wasn't somebody forcing me to close it at night. Because that's something that he made me do. He made me close the door, but I really like to sleep with the door open. I was able to have the storm door locked and closed, but open the door and let the sunlight in. Because that's something that I would have wanted to do that he wouldn't let me do. I was able to ask my kids what they wanted for dinner and have leftovers for the next day and sleep. Oh my goodness, if you've been in a toxic relationship, you know that sleep is a coveted situation when you're with that person, because he would go to the gym and he would be there for 4 hours and he would get home at 11 p.m. and I had a nursing he wasn't a baby anymore, but he was like in the toddler stages. He was still nursing, and I was waking up at 5 a.m. to go to work. But yet when he got home at 11:30, he was waking me up because he needed something from me. And I was able to sleep peacefully in my own bed with the lights off and the TV off and silence. And so you can move forward. You can move forward. You can let go of that thing, but you have to tell yourself that the difficulty in letting go is far more impactful on your life than the difficulty in staying. Like, you're going to stay and your life isn't going to change. It's going to get worse. But the impact and the detriment that is attached to that letting go is that you get to become exactly who you were created to be. You get to become more of yourself, and you get to have peace and freedom and all of the things that are actually welling up in you, which is why you feel so miserable right now. So yes, it's difficult to let go, but it's also difficult to stay. And I promise you, the hard of letting go is much better than the heart of staying in a relationship that isn't meant for you, staying in a situation that isn't meant for you. Because I promise that the devil you know is in fact still a devil, but what you have waiting for you could just be the thing that will set you free. Thank you for tuning in. If this video resonated with you, remember to like and subscribe to my channel, follow me on all social medias, and make sure that you share this information with somebody that you know that would resonate with, because you could just be the catalyst that they need to break free from the toxicity that they're living in and the bondage that they're experiencing, so that they may live a life of freedom and peace. Thank you for tuning in, and I'll see you again next time.